Story 1. So, if you can't tell by the numerous responses, no matter what you do in your 20s, you'll feel like you wasted something. If you're scrolling through and happened upon this post, I hope you find my comment. You're going to have regrets. That's part of the human experience. It's how you learn what's valuable to you. Keep going. You know the areas in your life you need to improve. Do the work. You know you'll feel much better if you just take action. Do it. Take action. There are people waiting for you on the other side to welcome you into your new life of happiness and prosperity. I'm rooting for you. Don't give up, and don't you dare lose your way. Story 2. In retrospect, I didn't really know. I made mistakes, but I couldn't have known any different without making them. Story 3. Low self-esteem often leads to reliance on alcohol and quick dopamine sources for gratification. It is essential to first believe in your own abilities and then consistently aim for improvement, as progress does not happen all at once. Story 4. I spent too much time focusing on school and the start of my career, and not enough time trying to find a nice girlfriend or travel and explore. Now I am 31 and still single and untraveled. I feel a little lonelier each year as my friends have all found spouses, bought homes, and are now having children. Story 5. I smoked too much cannabis. If it works for you, more power to you, no judgment. It turned out to be the source of my severe anxiety. Story 6. I spent years figuring things out while enjoying life. I took 7 years to earn my bachelor's degree in communications, which I now consider a mistake. If you go to college, it's essential to pursue degrees in accounting, engineering, computer science, law, or healthcare. Otherwise, you may waste your time and money and face difficulties after graduation. Story 7. Failing to fully understand the financial system leads to purchasing items that are not necessary. It becomes significantly more difficult to invest later in life, as you will need to allocate larger amounts of money to compensate for earlier shortfalls. Purchase a used Toyota. 2. Purchase Bitcoin. Story 8. Looking back, I wasted my 20s by not taking care of my mental and physical health. I ignored signs of depression and did not exercise or eat well because I thought I was invincible. I also did not save any money, living paycheck to paycheck even though I could have budgeted better. Story 9. Hanging around with the wrong friends distracted me from a devastating loss. I coped by drinking, gaming, watching pornography, and sleeping too much. I started turning things around when I began volunteering in the community and became a big brother. It turns out that when you give to others, you also give to yourself. Story 10. It wasn't a waste, but I spent all of my 20s and part of my early 30s taking care of my parents. It was the right thing to do, but I know I missed out on a lot. One thing that was completely my fault was my crippling indecision about going back to school. I wish I had done it earlier. Story 11. I was in the army, moving from country to country. I loved deployments, so I was always eager to be on the next one. Turns out being on the other side of the world really complicates your dating life. Story 12. Being lazy and letting myself gain weight. I finally woke up one day at 30 years old and weighing 400 pounds and decided to change the direction of my life. It would have been much easier if I had a faster metabolism. Story 13. I spent most of my 20s living out of 2 duffel bags and traveling the world doing various contract jobs. While everyone else was dating and spending their formative years with long-term partners, I was constantly moving and in a new time zone every few months. I finally got on an actual career track around 30. Now, I am doing financially well at 40, but I am still frustratingly single, and it doesn't seem like that will change anytime soon. Story 14. I worked 2 service industry jobs. Mornings as a barista and nights as a bartender. After paying bills, I spent my paychecks almost entirely on social activities such as going to bars, attending parties, dating, and going on vacations with friends. None of those people are in my life anymore, but I learned many valuable lessons, and I am happy now, so I cannot say I completely wasted my time. Story 15. I worked a dead-end job as a tree planter from ages 18 to 29. I finally quit and started a new educational path, but now I feel about 10 years behind where I should be. Oh well, I planted around 2 million trees, so my carbon footprint is looking okay. Story 16. I was born into a difficult family and spent most of my 20s working unsatisfying jobs and studying. Now, I am trying to change careers in my 30s. Story 17. I spent too long in a dead-end job because it was easy and left me with plenty of free time to relax and play video games. Story 18. Not caring about maintaining friendships. Gaming as a way to pass the time instead of as a fun activity. By not spending my youth building a fitness foundation. I have the genes for athleticism as my family is into sports, but I chose to spend my time gaming. By not maintaining my musicianship. I practiced guitar for 4 to 9 hours every day from the age of 13 to 21. Then, I experienced a depression that lasted until I was 30, during which I barely played the guitar, maybe once every 3 to 4 months. Now, 3 years later, I'm approaching the technical skill I had at 19, but with much more harmonic understanding and experience, which makes it a unique situation. I recognize I wasted several years. By not taking my mental health seriously, I had suicidal thoughts, approaching life with a stoic and harsh mentality, where anything that affected me negatively made me feel weak. I tried not to let anything impact me, resulting in loneliness and emotional coldness toward others. Many years later, I learned to let go and relax a bit. I realize now that my 30s have been incredibly productive. Story 19. Alcohol addiction. I am currently on my journey to sobriety, with 7 days without a drink. After 12 years, I believe it is time to give it up before things get any worse. Story 20. I worked hard throughout my 20s, but I drank excessively and felt sick all the time. I was a full-blown alcoholic by the age of 26, yet I never missed work and advanced my career. I had to quit drinking 7 years ago because I was at risk of losing my job, home, and family. I wish I had gotten sober sooner to enjoy my youth instead of being drunk, working, or dealing with hangovers all the time. Story 21. I have always had trouble motivating myself, but that problem peaked in my early 20s. Initially, I couldn't get myself to do university work. Then I struggled with household chores and lost interest in my hobbies. Eventually, I found it difficult to get out of bed. I dropped out of university, sat at home unemployed, lost most of my friends, burned through my savings, and ended my 7-year relationship. I did nothing for years. Going outside to shop for groceries exhausted me but was the highlight of my day. At 25, I had no diploma, no job, no relationship, and no money, and it seemed likely that I would end up living in my parents' basement. That was quite a few years ago, and life is surprisingly good now. However, it still feels like a waste. Story 22. Pursuing a graphic design career was challenging. Nothing seemed to work out, so my wife encouraged me to take the civil service test and seek employment with the state. I felt like I was compromising my dreams, but the job provided stability, and we owned a nice house 5 years later. Story 23. I worked a low-paying job while living with my parents and saving money. I rarely went out and didn't take any vacations. My social life was non-existent for about 10 years. Story 24. From an experienced individual to the young men here, not caring excessively, within reason of course, is the key to living a good life, in my opinion. The second point is about being manipulated by someone my age telling you to wait. Wait for a promotion, a position, a business idea. You get the idea. If you are a young man, today is your time, right here, right now. Don't wait for your opportunity to be given to you by someone entitled. Take it. Many men in my age range, 45 plus, for some strange reason do not want to pass the reins of power and influence to the younger generation. It is their moment, we had ours. I believe the role of older men is to provide life insights based on our experience. But I'm just a person sharing my thoughts online, not a historian. If you don't follow this advice, trust me, in 20 years, you'll look back at all the decisions you made based on others' opinions and your fear of change, and you will regret the missed opportunities significantly. Just my opinion. Story 25. Well, shout out to Mondo Juice. You should check out his comment because it's true. In a week's time, I'll be 30. I wasted my 20s worrying about receiving unrealistic hardships in pursuit of success and self-isolating more and more over the years. I spent even more time drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. I was already drinking every night, But when COVID hit and I was laid off, I started day drinking excessively, which is absurd because it was my business. I was struggling. A year of that and quite a poor diet led me to develop diabetes. I was sick for a month and couldn't hold any solid food down for 2 weeks. I went to the doctors and they sent me to the hospital. My blood sugar was 1062. Since then, I've been sober and it's still a process getting to where I need to be. But if I hadn't learned that way, I would have never understood what I needed to learn. If I didn't spend 6 days in the hospital, if I didn't have the incredible staff helping me recover, along with an incredibly kind person named Russell as my roommate, and if I didn't have the supportive family and friends that I have, I'd probably be in a coma. Life is not a race. It is not even a marathon. It is an experiment. We're all just searching for the ingredients to nurture our souls into old age. And just like the creation of the earth and the moon, sometimes that process looks and feels a bit chaotic. But sometimes that is precisely how we find our way home. Story 26. At 26, I was in a relationship without passion or a future. I worked as a researcher, which I disliked, and spent 400 days playing World of Warcraft. I had neglected my health and fitness. Everything changed by the end of 26. I found my work exciting, limited my gaming to some emulated Game Boy and Switch games, and experienced significant personal growth. Now, I have a lot of passion for life. Story 27. By working hard, buying an apartment, and settling down, I regret not seeing more of the world, living in more places, and experiencing more of life. Yes, I am 48 and experiencing a midlife crisis. Story 28. Playing video games all day and partying whenever I could while not investing or thinking about the future in any way. I also spent all the money I made as soon as it landed in my bank account. Story 29. I am 23 years old and studying abroad on my own. At this age, I want to be free to explore new experiences, develop interests and hobbies, and meet like-minded friends. Currently, I am a graduate student in a foreign country, experiencing different cultures and connecting with people from various backgrounds through social media. Recently, I shared my study abroad life on a platform called Light Up, highlighting the food I have made and the books I enjoy reading. Many people interested in my experiences interact with me through recommendations from the platform. Although we come from diverse regions and countries, we share similar experiences and hobbies, which brings us joy. Through chatting with them, I have made many friends and learned about the living habits and cultural characteristics of different areas, greatly enriching my perspective. I am very happy with my life now and hope that my 20s will continue to be vibrant. Story 30. I didn't waste it all. It's a mix of good and bad experiences that I consider normal human behavior. I got into drugs, and I hope I am recovering from it. However, I also helped my family and received a promotion at work, so this is life. Story 31. I had a great time, but too much of a good thing can be a bad thing in the end. It took me another 10 years to recover mentally and financially. Story 32. Working continuously, it is a job that serves as a career but is based on seniority, which meant I never had weekends or holidays off and didn't travel much. I earned a good income, but I was only paying bills and spending on unnecessary items. I didn't consider saving or investing at that time. My job offers a pension, so I didn't prioritize contributing to my 457 retirement plan. I started increasing my contributions to my retirement plan around the age of 26 or 27. I began investing when the market declined at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that I don't spend recklessly, I feel more comfortable regarding my finances. I still don't travel as much as I would like, but I appreciate having a better work-life balance now that I hold a different position at work that is not seniority-based and offers a more advantageous schedule. Story 33. I posted my reply elsewhere. I worked too much in the hope that it would set me up for the future. Didn't. I earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree in the humanities, which proved to be a poor choice. I sacrificed friendships and enjoyment in my 20s, and now I find myself without a career and without friends. Story 34. Drinking, specifically getting drunk. I have gotten it out of my system, so now I just have a few drinks a couple of times a year and experience no hangovers since turning 30. Story 35. Smoking marijuana caused me to withdraw socially, so I just stayed in and sat on the couch for years. I've quit marijuana since and have a much better life now. Story 36. Drinking and partying excessively is inconsequential. Sure, enjoy yourself in your 20s, but do not let it dominate your life. Focus on your health, pursue your passions, and discover what genuinely interests you. Story 37. I spent my 20s playing in bands in Austin, Texas, working in guitar stores, and did some traveling and touring, but not enough. I have nothing but memories and a few friends to show for it. However, it made me a much better musician, which is cool. For the record, I drank a lot and smoked like Willie Nelson. That may have been wasteful. I could have practiced more. Story 38. Not switching between companies frequently could have potentially doubled my salary compared to my current one. Not applying enough sunscreen while my skin was still younger has resulted in preventable damage. Story 39. There were many hard drugs such as heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and research chemicals, as well as significant amounts of marijuana and alcohol. There was also a lot of casual sex, primarily involving friends with benefits and overlapping situations that everyone was aware of. Essentially, if it was self-destructive, I was involved. I never expected to reach age 30. In my late 20s, I found a wonderful woman who helped me learn to love and understand that I was worth loving. I still wasted a lot of time on drugs and partying, but I gained valuable insights about myself, learned a great deal about people, and made wonderful friends and memories. Story 40. I was navigating through life without a plan. I wasn't saving or investing my money. I managed to graduate from college but chose a non-viable major. My mental health was gradually declining, and I wasn't taking any steps to address it. I stayed in a long-term relationship with a toxic person, and worst of all, I had an unplanned child with her in my early 20s. Several years have passed, and I am finally getting my life on track in my early 30s. Story 41. I trusted the wrong person. I was in an 8-year-long relationship that was emotionally abusive. I ended it at 29, and I am still recovering from that experience. It is easier to find someone when you are 21, slim, and less jaded. Now, I find it hard to trust a man. Story 42. Army Rangers followed by 6 years in college and then started working in information technology. I'm not sure I would call it wasted time. Story 43. Married young and worked. Had my first child at 25. I didn't know who I was, had no real hobbies, and not many friends. I finally started figuring it out in my 30s. Now, at 42, I have the best friends, hobbies I love, and more self-confidence than ever. Story 44. I have been working from age 20 to age 28, about 250 to 320 hours a month. I lost all my friends and relationships. At age 33, I have a nice, debt-free house, but I have no friends and my health is poor. I have gained weight due to lack of sleep, unhealthy food, and insufficient exercise. This makes me feel useless and depressed. I do not have a girlfriend or even a crush. Story 45. FIFA, depression, wrong friends, doubt, pride, quickly quitting, burning bridges. I turned 29 in September and I've just enrolled for my undergraduate studies. Not as depressed and confused as before. I am trying to create my redemption story, but I still struggle with finances, loneliness, and vices like masturbation. Everyone has always said I'm intelligent, yet I believe I am operating well below my potential. If any successful and good men can offer me a word or two, I would greatly appreciate it. Story 46. I didn't hit the gym enough, didn't get into running, and didn't watch or read enough on how to improve. I also wish I had read more. I didn't get into the tech field. I was satisfied working 3 retail jobs at a time and just saving money. I didn't sleep enough. Otherwise, it was pretty great. Story 47. Firstly, I was saving diligently, and it has paid off as I bought a family home. Secondly, I experienced 2 5-year relationships in which the girls were not attracted to me. Lastly, I played old video games to stay indoors and save money. Story 48. I guess it was wasted because I got divorced at 29 years old, but I wouldn't trade those years with my children for anything. Story 49. I had a great time in my 20s, but now at 35, I am dealing with two main issues. I did not take my career seriously and should have focused on my degree and securing a good job in a growing industry. As a result, I am not earning as much as my peers from my 20s and am struggling with an old small business. Secondly, I did not establish a healthy routine in the gym or with working out. Sports injuries definitely hindered my progress. Now, at 35, I haven't set foot in a gym for 3 years. I am working on changing both of these aspects. Story 50. I smoked too much weed after my enlistment and pursued unfulfilling jobs, not realizing that starting a business is not a magical process. It involves taking risks, learning, and putting in the effort to get everything rolling. It requires dedication, rather than just clocking out to sit on the couch and go to sleep, only to wake up and go to work the next day. The real work begins outside of regular hours because that ultimately shapes your life. Story 51. I felt quite lost in my 20s. I focused too much on the relationships I had, which led to wasting money and missing opportunities. In my early 20s, I was out drinking all the time as well. Story 52. I left the Navy after being cheated on and became an alcoholic. I was homeless for a few months. It was the loneliest I have ever been. I don't think I had a friend in the world until I was 30. Story 53. By not using my money to travel out of the restrictive environment and going overseas for new experiences. Story 54. Working 80 hours a week as a chef, along with alcohol and drug use, and averaging about 3 to 4 hours of sleep each night. Story 55. The only part one regret is the gaps in employment. I could have been more proactive, but I am where I am now. Everything is fine. We all have our own journeys. Story 56. I had no confidence in myself and didn't believe I was good enough to apply for certain jobs. I struggled with confidence around women and felt anxious at networking events or social gatherings. I experienced significant imposter syndrome. I would put myself in situations to succeed, but then self-sabotage by lacking belief in myself. If I had the confidence and self-awareness I possess now in my 30s, I would have been unstoppable in my 20s. Story 57. I spent my 20s having 2 children, buying a house, and still partying with my friends like there was no tomorrow. I have no regrets. Story 58. My ex became pregnant with the men she dated after our relationship and struggled to cope. So I lived with her as a friend for 10 years to offer support. This experience served as good practice for having a child of my own. Story 59. Getting married to my high school sweetheart and staying married until I turned 30 was enjoyable. But ultimately it limited my life experiences that I will never regain. Story 60. Bonnaroo every summer. I tried a handful of jobs and only took one college class at a time. I have my Associate of Arts degree and climbed the corporate ladder in a marketing company, doing well enough for myself at 36, but I am still trying to go back to school to finish electrical engineering. I have completed Calculus 3 with an A and only have 3 to 4 more prerequisites for the electrical engineering track, but it is challenging to return to school once you are working and paying rent, especially if you are not from a wealthy family. Story 61. I spent a significant portion of my 20s under the influence of psychedelics and ultimately found myself homeless due to my partying lifestyle. While I recognize that it wasn't a wise choice, I cannot label it a waste. The experience of crashing and burning, and then clawing my way out of that situation, ignited a fire within me that still burns today. I learned many lessons the hard way, but I did learn them, so I have no regrets. Story 62. Having a good enough mentality hindered my career. I felt comfortable accepting my first job offer, telling myself it was sufficient and that I was grateful to have a job. While I was indeed grateful, the position was not in the field I aspired to be in, and I remained there for years. I could have advanced my career much faster had I adopted a mindset focused on growth and development. I also did not take personal finances seriously. I didn't start saving money until I was 28. Before that, I lived paycheck to paycheck without budgeting. I accepted every social opportunity and outing without consideration. I didn't take the time to learn about investing or understand why markets react as they do. My income at the time was modest, leading me to believe that saving and investing were beyond my reach. Even if the amounts were small, I should have made an effort to learn how to invest and set aside a portion of my earnings for savings. I acknowledge that tomorrow is never promised, and it's important to live life and have fun. However, I don't want to live as if I won't see another day. I have a future ahead of me that requires me to build a solid foundation and stability. This is the mindset I wish I had adopted sooner. Today, I am in a much better place. I didn't ruin my future. In fact, I have surpassed some of my peers who lived differently. To reach this point, I dedicated years to hard work, focusing on saving and investing, working extra hours, and increasing my income. I could easily have remained in my previous situation if I hadn't committed to improving my circumstances. It didn't have to be this way, and I could have embraced a more balanced life in my younger years. Story 63. I spent weekends partying with friends and using alcohol and cocaine. I am glad I left those bad habits behind 10 years ago, but now I feel lonelier than ever. Story 64. As I approach my 28th birthday, I reflect on my journey since I began working in kitchens at 19. For nearly 7 years, I never had a full summer to enjoy being a carefree 20-year-old. The tourist season is the busiest time of year for restaurants. After all those years, I didn't have much to show for it except an impressive resume and a sore back. It's one thing to have a job. It's another when it consumes all your time and energy, taking a toll on your body. Story 65. Not enough focus on investing and preparing for the future financially. Too many late nights gaming and not enough time spent learning. Story 66. I worked in a corporate retail management job. I gave my life away in my prime and regret it every day. I was a talented musician who didn't believe in myself, despite encouragement from everyone except my parents. I bought into the idea that I needed a conventional job and felt like I lost my true self. I ignored my desires, physical pain, and mental health. I'm still recovering today. Story 67. Meaningless relationships, no solid career path as the one I planned fell through, and I did not invest my money wisely. Story 68. I feel like I wasted my teens, which led me into a lost decade of bad habits. Now I'm stuck asking myself if I should start over or use what I have to make something of it. Help. Story 69. My 20s were great. I had a couple of jobs, vacationed in Spain twice, had a couple of relationships, and played some video games. It was a fantastic way to spend my 20s. I would do it all again if I could. Story 70. Starting in 1979, I met the girl of my dreams, graduated from college, married her, bought a house, and had a son, all before turning 30. Story 71. Drugs and partying, going on trips. It was enjoyable sharing those memories with friends, but school was an afterthought. Story 72. Working in a dead-end menial position and wasting my earnings. I was in that position for 8.5 years. Still the longest I have been at any one employer. Story 73. Video games. I had a small friend group, and we would play different massively multiplayer online games together. It was fun, but I no longer speak to any of them, which made it difficult to find other relationships. Story 74. I had autism from birth and was diagnosed at 41. I suffered a wasted life from ages 16 to 40, sitting at home and staring at the computer. I did travel, had exciting experiences at work and work conference trips, and had relationships. I experienced life, but mostly I was a shut-in. After my diagnosis and starting on Concerta, following 4 years of trying various psychedelics, I am finally in a position to do whatever I want and have dreams, too. Feels like a change. I love being a member of Generation X and appreciate that my first ever PC game was Paratrooper on an IBM PC 8086. That game is still challenging and can be played in a browser. Story 75. I love how some people wish they had studied more and gotten an earlier start to their careers instead of partying and enjoying themselves every day, while others say the exact opposite. Story 76. Youth hostels, organic farming, couch surfing, and studying topics that did not bring economic value but kept me healthy and sane. Reading textbooks, philosophy, and science fiction. It has taken me years, and I still haven't caught up to my peers. My education has expired, and employers don't take me seriously. I then used podcasts while working labor jobs to teach myself finance and history. In some ways, it seems like a waste, as I could have gone into information technology and become a fitness enthusiast like everyone else. Instead, I planted trees in developing nations and backpacked through Europe, funded by working 20 to 30 hours a week in high school in Cégep, which is similar to community college but not quite. Story 77. I'm only 22, but I've realized that relying on marijuana has made me comfortable with being lazy, and I'm done with that. I am now 10 days sober and hope to start a business soon. Story 78. I was clinically depressed starting at age 14 and received help at age 29. Suffice it to say, I didn't accomplish much in my 20s. Story 79. Drinking and drug use caused me to lose many friends due to my addiction. However, when I reflect on the possibility of doing things differently, I recognize that I would not have my pets or live close to my parents if I had not experienced all of that. I miss the people I lost, but I would also miss what I have gained if I chose a different path. Story 80. I lived a fast-paced, dangerous work life and missed much of my children's upbringing. I was present when I could be, but I was often away. The only thing I regret is working so hard that I missed out on what I was working for. I am 45 now, and things are drastically different. Story 81. I have been working too much and have become caught up in busyness. Yet nothing has really changed. This is how I feel at the moment, so time will tell if I am right or wrong. Story 82. By working part-time at a supermarket, I have no serious career goals or opportunities. I am just going through the motions at every shift. I should have been more industrious and energetic in my job search. Story 83. Clubbing every weekend, sometimes twice a week. No, I'm kidding. If anything, I wish I went out more. I don't see it as a waste, but I did stay at jobs longer than I should have. Story 84. Having bipolar disorder and recovering from it took a huge chunk of my 20s. I planned to make up for it in my 30s. But yes, I resent that illness. Imagine living in a state of constant mental agony. Story 85. I worked a job from age 25 to 30, where we were expected to be there 60 to 100 hours a week and all over the country. I would often be over 1,000 miles from home, driving my own car. The job was incredibly physically demanding and draining. However, I felt I had no choice in the matter, as I had no other job prospects in my field of study. On the other hand, I unlearned what my dad taught me my whole life, that hard work gets you ahead. That's not true. All hard work does is add to the responsibilities of the person next to you along with your own. Story 86. Marriage was a life lesson, and I realize now that I am far better and happier on my own. Story 87. Most of my 20s were spent in jobs I disliked and a few unfulfilling relationships. My advice is to make changes early and efficiently. Don't prolong the inevitable. Story 88. Make it to 23 in the next few weeks. It is not a long time wasted, but it was awful. I spent 4 years in a career that I don't love, gained weight, and adopted a passive stance toward the world. Until I had a wake-up moment at the start of this year. I took a job for 2 months, started a new career, and began running and exercising at home. I am starting to lose weight and see life for what it is. The result of my choices. Story 89. Drugs, drinks, and PlayStation. I never traveled or went anywhere other than locally. I had many friends, including my now wife, and a decent job, but we just partied in our small town. We wasted time and money being hungover and lying on the sofa. Story 90. I didn't save as much money as I should have. My wife also became unexpectedly pregnant when we were in our early 20s, which impacted our finances significantly. Story 91. Probably worrying about whether what I was doing was the right thing. Who cares? If you want to smoke weed all day and play video games, do it. That's what your 20s are for. If you want to spend your time chasing relationships, do it. It's what your 20s are for. If you want to spend your 20s chasing money and success, go for it. But everyone seems to learn in the end that you shouldn't have spent so much time worrying about whether what you were doing was the right thing. Your body will tell you if you're happy or not, and what to naturally work toward or not. The only time wasted is time spent worrying. Story 92. I received a DUI and spent almost a year unemployed and isolated. Aside from that, I wasted money at clubs and used drugs too often. Story 93. I am 26 years old, completely isolated, and barely have any human contact outside of my family. I often think about suicide. I have no friends. I have never held a girl's hand, let alone been in a relationship. I feel like my 20s have been wasted, and I do not have opportunities to salvage them. Story 94. Working 3 jobs and looking after a family that didn't want to care for themselves. Never having the luxury of time or money to enjoy the world or explore my own interests. I am 27 and have a job that will resolve both of those issues very soon. I just hope the back pain I experience doesn't slow me down. Story 95. I dated an abusive person in my early to mid-20s who, among other terrible things, completely isolated me. When I finally got out of that situation, I had nightmares about the things he said and did. I became extremely antisocial. Before my relationship, I spent a lot of time with friends and family. I wanted to go out with friends, but I didn't know how anymore. In my mind, I thought I was fine. I was alive, safe, not crying, and did not miss the relationship. Essentially, I was living in survival mode and wasn't dealing with my feelings about the situation and how dangerous it was. I bottled up my emotions and kept moving through life. I still had relationships. I never believed all men were bad and knew my experience was rare, but I never really felt attached to any of my partners except for one who was a great guy. In fact, most of my 20s and 30s were spent living with depression, mild agoraphobia, and feelings of detachment. I have a lot of anger towards myself for allowing this to derail my life and not seeking help sooner. I take complete responsibility for that. Therapy has been helpful, and I've been practicing vulnerability with people I allow into my life to foster attachments. Everything else is a slow process, but I am making progress and trying to find peace with things as much as possible. To anyone out there struggling or feeling numb, don't wait to get help. Your mental health is your business and no one else's. There's a lot of trial and error. It's not a quick fix, but the mistakes will be worth it. Story 96. I moved abroad and worked as an au pair for 15 months following college graduation. Most adults in my life told me I was wasting my time and should start my career. It was the best choice I ever made for myself. I got to travel all over Europe and experience another culture. My host mother also became one of the best friends I have ever had, and we still speak to this day. Additionally, it did not hinder my career at all. I returned and was employed with a highly reputable nonprofit within 2 weeks. It was not a waste in the slightest, but everyone was intent on telling me otherwise. Story 97. Chase your dreams and do what brings peace to your life. Women are attracted to confident men. They will notice you when you are genuinely happy. Story 98. I didn't take the gym and dieting seriously. I didn't improve my social interactions with women. Now, here I am at 30 with enough money to do what I want and with whom I want, but I lack the confidence to make it happen. Story 99. I spent all my money on beer and comic books. Since the Marvel Cinematic Universe gained popularity and other comic book shows were released, they are now worth a small fortune. I remember my coworker saying I was wasting money when I bought a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 1 for $400 in the early 2000s. The bank teller asked me what I was going to do with the cash at the time, and when I told her, she was surprised by my purchase of one comic book. Story 100. I am not pursuing my dreams with enough determination. I am not being more strategic with my finances. I am not engaging in relationships I could have. I attended college for 2 years. Story 101. I partied too much every Friday and Saturday, and usually on a Tuesday or Wednesday happy hour most weeks as well. I ate poorly and didn't work out enough. I didn't take my career seriously and acted like everything would be handed to me. I spent far too much money on partying that could have gone into investments or travel instead. I didn't get my life together for real until my mid-30s. Now at 40, I am in the best shape I have been since my late teens. I am making more money than ever, and I am an active and engaged husband and father. I still managed to enjoy some beers on the weekend too. Story 102. By working until my physical and mental health were completely depleted, I am currently applying for disability as a result. I am 31 years old. Story 103. I played a lot of Xbox and had a great time doing so, but upon reflection, I probably could have engaged in more productive activities instead. Story 104. Traveling, exploring, attending college, receiving a congressional award for community service, and earning enough money to get by while pursuing my passions were significant parts of my life. I earned a degree that would allow me to live comfortably in my 30s when I chose to step off the ride. I did not have any external financial assistance for any of this, except for inheriting a 20-year-old van valued at $2,500 and completing the free application for federal student aid. Story 105. I didn't care about college. My entire life revolved around having fun, which at the time meant partying, using drugs, and engaging in sexual activities. I wish I had focused more on academics and addressing my traumas instead of getting distracted. Story 106. Still in my 20s and doing well for myself, one thing I've noticed that affects men my age is people who are trying to figure things out. People give themselves too much leeway because they are young. This works until you reach a point where you are no longer considered young. Before you know it, you wake up in your 30s and dislike what you have built. Keep it simple. Exercise. Finances. Money can contribute to happiness. Appreciate your family. Make friends through your hobbies. Educate yourself about finances. If you carry a balance, consider whether you should have a credit card. Lastly, be intentional with your time. Story 107. Wait for nothing. It is the killer in your 20s. Ask that person out. Get your driver's license. Start investing, start traveling, and start a business. If you lose a few $100s, the experience will pay for itself 10 times over, and it looks amazing on your resume. Don't wait. Time only goes by quicker. Don't waste the long years of your life waiting. Story 108. I spent my ages 18 to 25 gaining skills and knowledge while working full-time, as I could not afford college. I enjoyed social activities, but I also maintained my job. In hindsight, I realize I could have accomplished more if I had dedicated less time to recreation. If I could change one significant thing, it would be to keep my finances separate from my ex, who took a considerable amount of my money. Story 109. Yes and no. I don't know if anyone can truly say they wasted a period in their life unless there was a standout opportunity they were always turning their back on. Sure, being young and healthy with your whole life ahead of you can be considered a great opportunity you are not taking advantage of. But I don't know. You're still alive, so that's a win. No one knows what may or may not have happened if you had taken a different direction. I wish I had traveled a lot in my 20s, which I didn't do. I didn't think about it then like I do now. It just wasn't really on my radar like it was for others. And if I could click my fingers and suddenly be 22 with $15,000 in the bank like I had, I would sell everything and start traveling. But that's me now. It wasn't who I was back then. I wanted to be a successful musician and played in a few bands for years. I went to many great parties and met interesting people throughout my 20s. I worked at a cinema for 5 years, fell in love with movies, and learned valuable lessons by making a lot of mistakes. Story 110. My dad died of colon cancer, and a year later, my mom was diagnosed with a degenerative neurological condition. I had 2 siblings still in high school. I spent most of my energy trying to hold my family together while feeling completely out of my depth. Most of my focus was on what was good for everyone else. It affected my career, my relationships, my confidence, and my self-image. Now I'm in my 40s and confronted with the reality that people only really care about what you have and how you can benefit them. It doesn't matter what you had to overcome to get where you are. If you aren't on par with everyone else, then you are overlooked. Part of me wishes I could have been the kind of person who could have just not cared, been entirely selfish, and done what was good for me. It would have made me a bad person, but I think I would be better off in life overall. Story 111. I put off growing up and wish I had addressed some mental health issues in my early 20s. I didn't know what I was up against. I spent my early 20s partying excessively, drinking too much, and quitting a good job to avoid being fired for showing up half drunk and hungover while poorly handling my girlfriend leaving me. That said, I don't really regret my time until age 26 because I was learning about life. From ages 26 to 31, there was utter stagnation, a dead-end job, saving no money, spending time at sports bars, getting drunk, and having flings with cocktail waitresses and bartenders. At 31, I quit my job and returned to school, something I should have done at age 26. Story 112. I worked very hard in school, giving it my all to achieve the best grades. I took extra courses, volunteered, and networked, hoping this would help me move forward into a good career. Unfortunately, it did not. In the following years, I continued this pattern, reading many self-help books and trying to get ahead. Meanwhile, I struggled with my social life, having little to no romantic engagement. I felt miserable and saw no progress. I'm grateful I escaped the rat race early. Now, at 30, I focus on spirituality and creativity. Story 113. I married my high school sweetheart, but she left me for my best friend 2 years later. I became a heavy drinker and gained weight, working in a couple of dead-end jobs. It took me until I was 31 to break the cycle of unhealthy habits. Drinking can be enjoyable but needs to be done in moderation. It can damage your mental and physical health before you realize it. Story 114. The irony of these posts is that they often reflect people regretting not having more fun and living life for themselves, as opposed to focusing solely on their careers. Many feel they lack life experiences and now believe that all they have is their job. On the other hand, some say they wish they had focused on setting themselves up and planning for the future. They feel they spent all their money having fun on weekends without taking anything seriously. Now they have a job they are not satisfied with and little to show for their efforts. We all need to be a bit gentler with ourselves and realize that these realizations often come in hindsight. You can only learn from your past actions. Every year of our lives could feel like a waste if we are not actively trying to avoid repeating the mistakes we made the previous year. One thing everyone can do on a weekly basis is to participate in activities they are invited to. Say yes to things you usually say no to because you can't be bothered. You never know where it might lead. Life is what happens while making other plans. Story 115. Even though I worked a lot, I wasted a significant amount of free time that I no longer have now that I have children. Youth is truly wasted on the young. Story 116. Thinking I had all the time in the world. I was working, sleeping, and playing video games, which is not necessarily a bad thing. However, I mainly wasted years pining after a girl and a life I messed up. Now in my late 30s, I am trying to right the ship. Story 117. 2 years of daily cocaine use left me as a fully functioning addict. I can barely remember that time in my life. I did nothing but work and use cocaine, which led to significant debt. Story 118. I worked really hard and got a well-paying job. I entered a relationship that drained my finances, energy, and happiness. I ended it but then lost that job due to depression. To combat my depression and misery, I spent every penny I had traveling and enjoying life for a while. Believe it or not, it helped. Afterwards, I felt content and was no longer particularly depressed. However, I found myself back where I started. Without money, without a job, and alone, as if nothing had changed in 10 years. As for relationships, probably not again. I gained no happiness from them, only pain. I plan to be happily single for a long time, but at least I have experiences and stories to tell. Story 119. I developed a marketable skill set doing something I eventually came to dislike. Now, finding a job that offers comparable pay is nearly impossible, so I am returning to the same line of work. Story 120. I tried to impress my friends by doing things I didn't enjoy. Later, I realized they were not even my friends, so I wasted my time trying to impress people I didn't care about. It was foolish. Story 121. They only started a few months ago. So far, I've wasted most of that time trying to figure out what's wrong with my mind while simultaneously not taking any action. It's the same experience I've had during most of my teenage years. Story 122. I worked hard, raised 2 children, went through a divorce, and faced financial challenges. I surfed before and after work and bought used vehicles to fix and flip for additional income. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.